Garrison Ortiz just needs to be the unabashed liberal that he is. He's a young man. He was in favor of the marijuana industry. A lot of people are trusting you, Garrison, but you're running to the right so goddamn hard. You want these white Republicans, these wealthy, middle, white class Republicans to love you so goddamn much. You're running right into their arms. Gray Chrysler 300 weight. 3 suspects were apprehended at Quick Stop. So they're just chilling at Quick Stop, huh? A gray Chrysler 300 pulled up to a house on the 700 block of South Knox Drive around 1 p.m. And one of the occupants asked to speak to one of the residents of the home. When the victim walked outside, one of the suspects brandished a gun and fired at least 1 shot. Back in John D Rockefeller's time period, they had asked him, the committee chairman said, if you would stand, Mr. Rockefeller, would you stand by your anti-union principles even if it costs you all of your property and it kills all of your employees? Rockefeller says it's a great principle. So no matter what, he's going to make sure unions cannot have any recognition whatsoever. And it became a fucking war because of Rockefeller's position. Many of the rights they sought were required by Colorado law anyways, but they remained unenforced. Apparently, if you're a corporatist, apparently if you're a millionaire, this is the company Petco would pay, right? We just give $1 million to Rockefeller. Here, Rockefeller, here's $1 million. Nearly half of Colorado counties have formally rejected a Comcast-backed law restricting the city-run internet. So Comcast got a statewide law that says you cannot have municipal-owned internet unless the people have a referendum first. One of the biggest failures of democracy in Pueblo County was the school board race for D70. For D70, nobody ran. Everybody in the county said, fuck the school. We're not going to raise our hands. We're not going to try. We're not going to participate. We're not going to help. And the incumbents, so the 3 incumbents, went ahead and ran again. They put their names on the ballot, and nobody else ran against them. So by de facto, by default, they went ahead and won again. And so they canceled the election. They canceled the election, and then the comments that they had made right afterwards was essentially, well, our residents just know how great of a job we do. We just do such a good job. And they just said, you know what? We're going to let them run again, and we're not going to offer any challengers whatso goddamn ever. I don't agree. I think the county didn't know what the hell was going on. They're not interested in politics. They don't want to do the damn thing. And they didn't know what was going on. They're ignorant. They're ignorant about it. I was going to do a progressive v. regressive scoreboard, and I'll still do that. So who won? Did the progressives win? Did the regressives win? Who won? Starting off, the progressives were losing because the Sandy Gutierrez was not an incumbent, so I consider that a progressive win. Dan Archibald was an incumbent, so that was a regressive loss. But then with the school board election, all 3 incumbents, 100% incumbency rate, worse than China's Politburo or in Russia, they all retained their same seats, 100% incumbency rate. So that's a regressive. That's 4 points for the regressives, 1 point for the progressives. So they all were bragging. Okay, so once they all got their re-elections, they canceled the election, people clapped. They're like, congratulations, you're a school board member for another 4 years. Another 4 years, so I don't know if they're like D60 and that they don't get paid, but for another 4 years, they're going to have power. D70's got more money. D70's budget is bigger budget than the city of Pueblo and D60, but less than the county and less than Everaz and Black Hills. Everaz, they bought that company out for $2.8 billion. Our city has $90 million, $80 million. So it's not even 1/10 of a billion, so it's like 1/20th. Our city is 1/20th, the budget of our city is 1/20th the size of Avraz, the Russian-owned steel plant, the lone steel plant, the coal and iron steel plant that caused the Ludlow Massacre. Yeah, they're owned by the Russians now. $2.8 billion is what they paid for it in order to get it, and then they have revenues and profits, or I don't know how much, but total revenues of $7 billion a year. I'm not for sure their profits, but it was $3 billion to pay for, so that's how much it owned, right? That's how much the capital is. And then they make, it says here that after submitting to the Colorado Department of Education a request to reconsider The district was notified earlier this month it had moved up from accredited with approved improvement plan to accredited with performance, the second highest rung on the state's 5-tier ladder. And so I guess they retained their accredited rating. But why is this a huge deal? Well, in September, the district had learned that it missed retaining its rating by 1/10 of a percentage point. Oops. So these folks, these city council folks who were the incumbents, the reason why they said they won re-election was because they were doing such a great job with the school. They're doing such a great job with the school, except for they're not even accredited. They're not even accredited. They retained it barely. They were down by 1/10 of a point. They're kind of like, oh, come on, guys. We were down 1/10 of a point. I remember when I did that with Mary Beth Wilson, a teacher in 2 sets of grades, and essentially there was people that got real low C's, and that's where a bunch was, but then there was a bunch of A folks, and mine was 92.5, real close right there on the line, and it was a judgment call, so she looked at my presentation, and she's like, I think that's a B thing, and so because of the judgment call, because it was right there on the line, I felt like statistically I was, at the top of the class, but, technically, yeah, with the way the grading point had gone down. And so I'm like, I'm right there. And she didn't give a shit. And fuck you. You didn't do your thing right. So fuck you. Fuck your life. But meanwhile, we're supposed to be like, oh, great. Oh, they was just 1/10 of a point off. It's okay. We love them so much. We went ahead and reelected him. We didn't even run against them. You didn't run against him because you didn't know about it. You was ignorant. And the paper didn't tell you. You didn't know what the hell was going on. And really, I mean, do you even want to mess with politics? Fuck all that political bullshit. Just go to your private job and make money. Fuck the community. Apparently another thing, I mean, maybe I was being a little judgmental about the county, but when the county looks at themselves, this is the person that they see. They're like, yep, that's me, Mr. Bowtie Man, Mr. College Man, Mr. Educated, better than everybody, man. Right? So that's what they see. That's who they are. The county people here, I'm thinking they just, might be some bumfuck, fucking dumb fucks, but no, they're stuck up, actually. They're like so intelligent and intelligentsia, they think they're better than everybody and that their shit don't stink. And really, they want to brag about D70. The only thing that D70 does well is they got parents who give a shit about their kids because, they've been sitting on land for quite some time. But I guarantee you D70 sucks when it comes to their poor kids. I guarantee you, oppression isn't going to help their poor kids. They might, help some of them out of the muck, but for the most part, shut up, sit down. They're worried about their careers. They're worried about their paychecks. You ain't nothing to the parents and to the students. In the election process, the League of Women Voters had posted candidating. They wanted to get all the candidates there and go in a circle, and so they were kind of like building relationships. So you're getting to find out who they are, but you're also building relationships at the same time. So they kind of fused those two things together, and it was really effective. It worked really well. Now, Brian Mader had typed, hey, this is a really good idea. How smart. I liked it because I recognized that he saw a good thing. He got on my page, and it was like, who is this guy? I said, vote for Kenny O'Neill. He put a ha-ha-ha laughing thing, and it's like, who the fuck is this prick? The first thing that he wants to do is basically what? Laugh me into oblivion. He's so much smarter, so much better than me. Yet he's against studying the county and the city consolidation because he's against studying. He's against education and reading books. He's anti-education. So Brian Mader I thought he was a county person, but he ran for a city council seat. So that means that he looks like that. He's a fish out of water. But, if the city figured out the life of me, why he hated Kenny, O'Neill so damn much. It was like, laugh at your opinion. So essentially there's two reasons. He's a piece of shit, that's the reason. But the other reason, let's give some logic, a little bit, bigger, better analysis than that. If you were to look at Brian Mader in the big picture, so in our electoral system, you pick two people, so he probably picked, Dottie Calhoun and Margaret Wright. So he was pulling for, no, he would never vote for Margaret Wright. So he picked Dottie Calhoun and probably Taylor Voss, right? So those are probably his two choices. He voted for Taylor, he voted for Dottie, and then everybody else was just shit, because that's what we're supposed to do in American politics. We pick our horse, and then we shit on everybody else, because we don't have instant runoff voting. We don't respect the other candidacies, even if they have a large constituency. Even the biggest losers of the night, the people in the last place, they got 3,000, 4,000 votes. That means they represented a demographic. Mader keeps running for office and he keeps losing, and so he's got to, I guess, to remain relevant, he just needs to be his old dickhead self. So Brian Mader's a dickhead. I thought he was out in the county, but the fact that he ran for the city, now I'm wondering, is it like some Is he going to try to get into the city to fuck us all over for the county? He has a very warped ideology. He's a bad person. He wants to laugh at Kenny O'Neill. Why? Because he's a veteran? Because he fought for this country? Because he was in the military? Is that the reason why Brian Mader hates him? And then in his mind, you know, Brian is probably like, oh, I was just laughing at him. No, you were denying his humanity. You pretended like he was absolutely fucking dumb and stupid, and that anybody that would stand up and defend Kenny O'Neill is dumb and stupid too. So you basically weren't just criticizing him, you were questioning his humanity. Aha, you like this guy. Yeah, Brian Mader didn't even pay attention to the appointments, right? So if you want Brian Mader to shit on you, then offer yourself as a candidate. Apparently that's, you know, if you want to see what the city looks like, take a look at Brian Mader. If you want to see what the county looks like, then take a look at Mark Emery. Mark Emery is the face of the county, and then Brian Mader is the face of the city. Isn't that interesting? So no wonder the city's got all the problems that it's got. And so, you know, he was pissed off about the military. Is that what it was? He was pissed off that Kenny O'Neill served in the armed forces and he fought for this country, and he did, you know, he was part of the, is that what he was pissed off about? America. Brian Mader basically hates the United States of America, and so that's the reason he hated Kenny O'Neill. Kenny O'Neill is a humble Obama. Kenny O'Neill is better than Obama's a stuck-up snob. Obama got, you know, he's like Mark Emery, right? He puts a little bow tie on and he's better than everybody. So Kenny O'Neill's not better than everybody, and it's a shame that Brian Mader did not see that and that he wanted to be a dick, right? That's what he wanted. Mader wanted me to know that he's a piece of shit, so I see you, you piece of shit. I see you. Right there. There you are. Yep, I'm questioning your humanity. I'm pretending that you don't even fucking matter. You probably hate it, right? You probably don't like it. You're probably like, God, this isn't nice at all. But instead of recognizing that that was what you were doing to others, you'll be a piece of shit and you'll just keep on, right? White trash, you just escalate just to escalate, right? Even if the person made a good, you know, hey, don't damage my property because I would never damage your property. Yeah, but I don't want to lose this argument. I'm strung out on a bunch of fucking meth. And so, fuck you. I'm going to keep on escalating it. Yeah, you made a point, and yeah, I shouldn't terrorize you, but you know what? I'm not going to let you win this argument because that means I had given you some authority, and I'm not going to do that even if it means you were in the right. So yeah, D70 wasn't even accredited. They weren't even accredited. Yeah, your school's so much better than D60s. I don't think so. It's just as oppressive, and the rich kids will succeed, the poor kids won't. Election day analysis. So essentially what you have here is a failure to communicate, right? I thought that Pueblo was a huge progressive town. There's many reasons why it's not a progressive town. It's being run by corporatists. Petco, the chieftain is a Republican. The editorial board is a bunch of Republicans. They're a business, so they don't actually want to, you know, inform you of all the news that's fit to print. They're trying to sell advertisements to make some money. That's their point. They don't really give a shit about informing you. The advertisements are the important part, and then the rest is a news hole that they've got to fulfill. Joyce fucking Bales is a Republican. She started out all these kids with the Republican mentality. The entire millennium, the millennium for Pueblo City was started out by Joyce Bales for the first 6 years. That's another example of this being a conservative city. Galley was a city manager who was fired for bringing in Barack Obama. So Barack Obama, he's the candidate Obama, and he wasn't allowed in here because the city manager, they thought it was a political thing, so he got fired. These same business owners also made sure there wasn't a homeless shelter on Lake Avenue. They made sure that fucking homeless shelter got shut down. These great, wonderful Christians, they don't give a shit. There's not a single fucking homeless shelter for these homeless folks. So when they start to freeze to death, it's because these psychopaths don't give a shit. And I do want to share this one story here. This is some news and some election day analysis. Let's actually do the news first, and then I got a story. So nearly half of Colorado counties have formally rejected a Comcast-backed law restricting city-run internet. So Comcast got a statewide law that says you cannot have municipal-owned internet unless the people have a referendum first. Senate Bill 128 or so, but there was some talk about getting some municipal Wi-Fi here in Pueblo City. Well, we can't get municipal Wi-Fi until we overturn that Comcast law, and that Comcast law is Senate Bill 128. So people that were talking about it but didn't have a plan, well, you couldn't have got municipal internet regardless unless you put it on the ballots, which means we got to wait another year before we'll even see any kind of municipal internet come to Pueblo City. But at least we can put that on the ballot. Put it on the ballot. See if the people don't not want the thing, but allow for the option to get the thing. So, I mean, it's like, see, I think you should just pass a law. Pass a law and just just squash this thing, because this is obvious on its face. Of course, you should have the option, but unfortunately, people will take a ballot measure such as, should we have Wi-Fi, as in, should we have it, not the option. Fort Collins, and there's a lot of decisions made about Fort Collins when it comes to municipal cities. They had a ridiculous ad, which I made fun of before. But Fort Collins had this ballot question overturning Senate Bill 128 on their ballot to allow them to have municipal Wi-Fi. And only to allow them. It's not saying that they're going to get it, but just to overturn that law. Once the law has been overturned, now you get to decide, In fact, maybe that should be the question. Should we get municipal Wi-Fi? If we could get municipal Wi-Fi, instead of just asking for the option, let's just ask it for it. Straight up. Do you want some Wi-Fi, Pueblo City? Do you want some Wi-Fi? So Comcast, CenturyLink, they spent like 3 times the amount in order to squash it, but it lost in Fort Collins 57% to 43%. So, a fairly remarkable, a decent, sizable win, a decent victory. Colorado National Guard was being paid by the Rockefeller family. John D. Rockefeller felt like it was very important that they squash the idea of unions. What? The business owner, the CEO, the corporatist, the corporations, the people who run the corporations, they should just control the entire thing like a private tyrannical thing. Fuck labor. It's all about capital, right? It's all about the capitalist. The labor list, nobody gives a shit about the laborist, except for me. And so the capitalist, they are the ones back in John D. Rockefeller's time period. They had asked him, the committee chairman said, if you would stand, Mr. Rockefeller, would you stand by your anti-union principles, even if it costs you all of your property and it kills all of your employees? Rockefeller says it's a great principle. So no matter what, he's going to make sure unions cannot have any recognition whatsoever. Legacy of the Ludlow Massacre. The book said they had a detective agency that was called in, the FETS detective agency, something, but it was really horrible fucking detective people, but private mercenaries, right? So like your Blackwaters. And they had 8,000 Colorado mine workers went on strike. These were the scabs first generation immigrants from Italy, Greece, and Serbia. So a bunch of Greeks and Italians and Serbians. So they started working at the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, which is Evraz today, owned by the Russians. This is the summer of 1913. The United Mine Workers tried to organize them. They couldn't. And so these Italian, Greek, and Serbian scabs came in, and they took the jobs that the previous people had. But then they got fed up too, and then the United Mine Workers... The union was talking about low pay, the long unregulated hours, tyrannical management practices. So they tried to work it out, but eventually, they weren't respecting the workers. And so they were able to convince the laborers to strike, and it became a fucking war because of Rockefeller's position. Many of the rights they sought were required by Colorado law anyways, but they remained unenforced. Apparently, if you're a corporatist, if you're a millionaire, this is the company Petco would pay, right? We'd just give $1 million to Rockefeller. Here, Rockefeller, here's $1 million. He hires this private detective company, like the Fetz Baldwin or some shit. The National Guard themselves was being paid for with John D. Rockefeller's money. The strike went on for months. And then in April 1940, he was just fucking 20th. 1914, a day after the Orthodox Easter, 4 militiamen brandished a machine gun at some of the striking miners. At some point, shots were fired, and then a day-long gunfight ensued. The National Guardsmen set fire to the Ludlow colony. 13 residents who tried to flee were shot and killed. as the camp burned to the ground and many more burned to death. This is April 20th, the day after Orthodox Easter. 4 militiamen brandished a machine gun, and then shots just happened to get fired. Discovered among the ruins the following morning was a woman's infirmary where 4 women and 11 children had sought to escape the fighting by hiding in a cellar-like pit. All the children and 2 of the women died. One survivor, Mary Petrucci, lost 3 of her own children in the infirmary. Years later, she recalled, "I came out of the hole. There was light and lots of smoke." So the many Americans, the massacre had exposed consequences of unchecked corporate might, and it roused the conscience of a country that had previously demonstrated impassive ambivalence towards organized labor. So it's bullshit today. I still think of the Ludlow Massacre, and I get pissed off today. So they said that it took away from the United States' potential involvement in the Mexican Revolution. So the Mexican Revolution was happening, Pancho Villa, he was, going around being crazy and shit, and then Ludlow Massacre happened. So it just shows you that these corporatists just didn't give a shit about American workers. 2 days later, Congress convened to discuss the events at Ludlow, to consider how the government might check martial law wielded by private industrialists. A radical Republican from Iowa, William Kenyon, decried the government's ties to the violence, noting that the Colorado Fuel and Iron trade unions started getting bigger after the Wagner Act, the 1935 Wagner Act. Company unions were the thing, and then after the Wagner Act, it was trade unions, 1935 Wagner Act. Yet the struggle that Ludlow embodied that historically unions have taken up is a contemporary one, even if unions are no longer playing as public a role. Some of the fiercest workers' rights battles take place over government regulations that protect low-income workers' access to Medicaid and other social services, and that buoy the federal minimum wage, which is currently far below its 1968 peak value. In her recently published autobiography, Elizabeth Warren wrote that big corporations hire armies of lobbyists to get billion-dollar loopholes into the tax system, persuade their friends in Congress to support laws that keep the playing field tilted in their favor. She sounds like a Republican senator in the days after Ludlow, worried about Colorado iron. A woman from Pueblo had to file a protective order against the squatter. So it actually seems like this city government is just incredibly dysfunctional all around. They are dysfunctional when it comes to getting people who's squatting in the owners' homes who live around here. The absentee landlord, meanwhile, they get protection, but the local folks, they don't. And so she said she had to leave. She had to get a hotel. There was a squatter. She called the police, but something about something, for some reason, they couldn't do what was right, and something about the law or some shit. So I feel like this is bullshit. I don't know what the hell is stopping people from doing what they need to be done, but if you have to leave your own house because there's a squatter in your house, there's shitty landlords out there, so we got to be vigilant against those. But most of the time, tenants have no. A man, Roland Hawkins, he had to file an eviction to get his house back, and the court process took weeks. Instead, he filed a restraining order, and then that kicked the person out immediately. And so that was the loophole that the guy figured out in order to do. Pueblo woman, Roland Hawkins. Okay, so they're just saying, whatever. There's a whole bunch of different people and actors. So anyways, there's people, and Patricia Carter is the third person who's had squatting issues. Frankly, there's no reason for the homeless people to not commit crimes. If they commit a crime, at least they'll live in a warm jail, right? Yeah, you're piling a bunch of people up. If you had damn shelter, you wouldn't have all these damn criminals, but they're homeless, so there's no incentive for them not to commit crimes. Well, let's solve it at the root. In the south side of Pueblo, Wednesday evening, it happened at the 1400 block of Cypress Street, and then they said that it wasn't clear if the person in custody was the shooter or the one who got shot. The police were still on the scene at 5 p.m. investigating. As of Thursday, information remains limited. So 1400 block Cypress, below Northern Avenue, south side. So, shot fired in Pueblo West one of the 18-year-old got arrested, and then the minors were arrested, but they didn't mention the name. So little hoodlums, trying to be hoodlums. They want to say that one of the suspects brandished a gun and fired at least one shot. No, gangsters out in Pueblo West. And they said that a gray Chrysler 300 3 suspects were apprehended at Quick Stop. So they're just chilling at Quick Stop, huh? A gray Chrysler 300 pulled up to a house on the 700 block of South Knox Drive around 1 p.m. And one of the occupants asked to speak to one of the residents of the home. When the victim walked outside, one of the suspects brandished a gun and fired at least one shot. The suspect vehicle reportedly sped away and was parked in another area of Pueblo West. That's where a resident noticed and reported seeing the 3 occupants get out of the Chrysler. Then they got into a white Dodge Charger. The witness was able to identify the make, model, and color of both vehicles, which led deputies to the suspects. They recovered the loaded handgun. So brandishing a firearm, right? They were trying to intimidate people. They were terrorizing people. Corey Feldman, eventually John Grisham. John Grisham had molested Corey Feldman. Says, I believe that I can also bring down potentially a pedophile ring that I've been aware of since I was a child. Feldman proceeded to call the Los Angeles Police Department and reported Grisham live on air. Grisham was found guilty in 2003. He had been arrested before, but he didn't register as a sex offender. Grisham is not a well-known actor, licensed to drive, dream a little dream. Crowdfund Corey Feldman's Truth Campaign in a YouTube video. So Corey Feldman, a lot of people are. Garrison Ortiz just needs to be the unabashed liberal that he is. He's a young man. He was in favor of the marijuana industry. A lot of people are trusting you, Garrison, but you're running to the right so goddamn hard. You want these white Republicans, these wealthy, middle, white class Republicans to love you so goddamn much. You're running right into their arms. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. Some things you're liberal, some things you're conservative on. So if you're only running to the conservative side and you're not, it seems like you're almost apologetic or you're embarrassed about the treatment center. Let's have $315 million for a fucking jail and then just use a few $1 million for a treatment center. No, it's the opposite. Take $315 million and put it into a treatment center or a homelessness program so you actually, solve the problem right at the root. That's what you got to do. I would have been totally in favor of the treatment center. Who the fuck would be against a treatment center? Treatment center is the right direction for a police detective and a convenience store worker who are being sued in Denver. They're being sued in Denver. It's a Pueblo police detective and a Pueblo employee. So Loaf and Jug employee Stephen Mays and Detective Vince Petco are defendants in the lawsuit filed by Brian Patrick Maloney. And other defendants are the City of Pueblo and the convenience store company. So the accusations, it just seems like what a pain in the ass to have to sue somebody in U.S. District Court in Denver. Is that our system? Is that the only way we could get justice? And it's saying September 5th, 2015, on 120 South Santa Fe, Maloney was a customer, but he was accused of not paying for his hot dogs or something, and then he sat in jail for 5 days. We got Brian Maloney, who said that he was accused of not paying for 2 hot dogs and a soda pop. So for $2.50, Stephen May said that he didn't. This is what the lawsuit says, but the employee says, hey, you didn't pay for that. And then the cop was like, hey, you got to pay for that. And then they're like, no. And then he got into a fight about it. He was like, no, this is where I draw the line. I'm allowed to take whatever hot dogs I'm allowed to take out of this business. And so they do say that they said that it was objectively reasonable. His use of force was objectively reasonable. So they deny all the charges, but just interesting, right? So they're saying malicious prosecution. So that's the municipal court and the city police and loaf and jug. This is disturbing. The person, a 22-year-old, was shot and killed inside of his home in the 1400 block of East 6th Street. And they're looking for a 15-year-old, Johnny Dennell Jr., 5'5", 148, black hair, brown eyes. That's a suspect, an identified suspect. They said that the homicide was reported by a man who lives in the home. He and his son were at the home with the victim and one other person, and his son knew the victim. And then they left the home, called the police from a public phone. The victim's name will not be released pending notification of next of kin, so they haven't even found out who this 22-year-old is.